the state, regional agencies, um, going to ribbon cuttings, openings, fundraisers, um, charity walks, all of the things that Victor does pretty near every single day. That's all coming out of his family and professional lifetime. So for him to join us this evening, much appreciated. Victor has a compelling personal story. Born in Zacatecas, Mexico, he came here with his family. His parents worked multiple jobs to support, I think, 6 kids. And Victor went to our public schools, learned English, um, went to college, put himself through law school, going at night while working. Um, Served 2 decades on our city council before running for mayor 4 years ago, and was thumpingly reelected in the last election. Victor and I have known each other for, I think, about 30 years, and
At least.
and he asked me a couple of years ago to be his special advisor on housing, an unpaid volunteer position, but one where we worked together successfully to get Pasadena's adopted housing element. Victor and I agree on most issues. We don't agree on all, and we may have opportunities to explore both of those tonight. But there are 2 topics that are close to Victor's heart that I thoroughly agree with him, not only on the issues, but on the importance of the issues. And we're going to spend most of our time this evening on those 2 issues. A word about the format. Um, my district liaison to be, Megati Derbagosian, is on, and she will be monitoring the chat. And I will try to weave your questions in to our conversation between Victor and I. At the very end, we'll have an opportunity for you to ask questions directly of Victor and me, if you'd like. But throughout the conversation, I'll try to, in real time, pull some of your questions in. We won't get to all of them, but I'm really looking forward to this being interactive. The 2 topics that will be our focus tonight are, one, the level, quality, and breadth of mental health services in our community. Again, one of the issues that I think is important to Victor and I look forward to working with him and our colleagues on the City Council to advance over the next 4 years. The other topic is one that Victor has provided a tremendous amount of leadership on, and collaborating with our school district and our community college, business as well as labor, which is to revitalize vocational education. Not every student in our schools is going to go on to college. Excuse me. And since not every student is going to go on to college, and even those who do have to, as Victor did, work their way through school, having the opportunity for at least the beginnings of a career as they graduate from high school or go on to our community college, that accomplishes a number of things. First, it gives opportunity to young people, sometimes who struggle, who don't have an academic focus, but who are bright and who have great potential. Number 2, it fills some key jobs in our community, many jobs of which go begging these days. And finally, it creates an opportunity for us to have jobs that are local, instead of folks having necessarily to commute long distances and clog our freeways and take time away from their families. So those are the 2 topics we're going to spend most of our time on, but toward the end, if you'd like to ask questions on additional topics, we'll have an opportunity to do so. Again, before we jump into the conversation, I just want to thank all of you for logging on this evening in this experiment, our first Zoom issue forum in our monthly series. And again, thank Victor for joining us. Victor, let's start out. Mental health is not typically the province of municipal government. It's either the state or the counties, and yet it's absolutely essential to our well-being. And it has a couple dimensions we'll be exploring here. One is, I know you're very concerned about mental health services for our young people. There seems to be a crisis across the nation of young people feeling out of sorts. Technology, COVID, the stresses of social media. Um, and then, secondly, it is an epidemic among our unhoused population that many suffer from mental illness, which um, exacerbates the suffering and misery of the people on our streets and sometimes makes it more difficult to get people off the streets. So let's start your thoughts about why this issue, why at the city level, and why you as mayor want to devote your personal leadership to this issue.
Well, let me first say thank you for having me and for everyone who's joined. Am I okay here?
Yep, you're doing great.
Okay. Um, and the first and foremost, I do think on the issue of mental health, it is the province of municipal government, and we've been dealing with it. It has been. The difference is we haven't had the resources to grapple with it properly. But there's no question that our city um, and the cities around us and communities throughout California and the country have grappled with the issue um, of mental health. We've just had to, because we haven't had the resources, we've had to deal with it through our policing, unfortunate, trying to improve public education, trying to increase job training. All of these issues we can probably relate back to uh, uh, people's adolescence and things that could have been done differently. And one of those issues is mental health. I think when the pandemic hit, we all were faced with it front and center. And it highlighted what we've all known to be true is we have a crisis, not just in Pasadena or Los Angeles County or the state, but I think nationwide. And the crisis it involves um, mental health, and too often it comes with some sort of addiction disorder as well. And you have a dual diagnosis situation. And we've seen that play out in our homeless population.
Mhm.
When people have addiction issues, they usually have a difficult time maintaining a job. And sooner or later, um, you know, they move in with family members first, and then it becomes very difficult for even that situation to maintain, and they end up on the streets. Um, and then from there, we as cities have had to deal with that issue, and so I I, I think that pushing the federal government, the state government, and the county to provide us with the resources, not directly. I think that's really your point. Is we're not going to go uh, into providing mental health services directly. That's the purview of Los Angeles County and the state departments of mental health. But we, as a city, can demand that we receive the services that we should be providing in our community. I'll give you one data point, um, and then I'll pause. But I discovered when I was elected to mayor, I wanted to do something about this issue because I've watched friends, I've watched family members struggle with both mental health and addiction disorder. And it's never a comfortable thing for any one of us to talk about. And it's been there in our families and in our circle of friends. And again, the pandemic really brought it to the surface. And so um, when I started looking around for help for family and friends, I discovered that the County of Los Angeles spends $50 million at that time, 50 to $52 million, $50 to $55 million per year on mental health services in the greater Pasadena area. When I try to bring my friends to assistance, I couldn't find a place, to take them to.
Mhm.
And when I asked the director of mental health, where do I take my friend? Um, my childhood friend, um, who was struggling with mental health and substance disorder. I was given a list of 19 providers who have contracts for those $55 million. And each of them required, a 2 to 3 day, I'm sorry, 2 to 3 week lead time for an appointment. Someone who's struggling in crisis needs help right now.
Mhm.
And that's what I discovered was missing is there's no place that you could take a friend in distress and um, get them assistance. I had to take my friend to Clear Cross for substance use disorder. I had to take him to Watts for mental health um, services. I had to take him to Pomona or the
So
West Side.
when you talk to the county,
Mhm.
um, do they say it's that there isn't enough money, that there aren't enough trained professionals, that the trained professionals don't have enough facilities uh, for both acute as well as less acute crisis? What are the answers you get back from the county about this challenge of finding adequate, timely services?
Well, I think it's a combination of both. I mean, the first, I went to Dr. Shearing, who was the head of mental health at the time,
Mhm.
and he said his comments of, still ring in my head. He said, Mayor, if there's something you can do to help with this, um, you know, you one of the best things you could accomplish. In my words.
Mhm.
Um, and he said, we need to fix the system because we're spending a lot of money, but um, we're not doing it as effectively as I think we should. But then he followed it up with,
Mhm.
but we also have a serious vacancy rate in mental health workers. I think at the time it was 3,000 mental health workers for our part of the state alone. And statewide, the governor was struggling with trying to get enough caseworkers,
Mhm.
enough mental health workers to fill the positions at a statewide level. And so, that's a serious issue. When you have that many vacancies in LA County alone, it's a serious issue.
Now, neither one of us is a mental health professionals, and I'm certain that among the folks who've tuned in, there are some, and we look forward to their questions and their comments.
Mhm.
Um, what do you see as the direct role of Pasadena? Advocacy? Is there a role for our health department? Is there a role for building greater resources and partnership with institutions in our own community? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think it's a combination of advocacy, and we're engaged in that now by working with the county to bring services at Lake and Villa.
Mhm.
And I am committed to that, and I believe the city council is as well as the city staff. Um, and so we're advocating for that. The other role that I see for the city is to coordinate the services that we do have already. I think, there are lots of good, excellent service providers in Pasadena. And I think, through our health department, helping to coordinate those services and frankly, bring these organizations more resources is the way to go. And that's what I believe to be the role of the city. Once we, and by the way, good news, we put out a request for proposals for that lake and
Mhm.
villa property, the Kaiser property,
Mhm.
and we've received 14 responses from some very large, very well-known corporations. I invite everyone to look at the the agenda, the city council agenda on Thursday, when the names of those organizations will be made public.
Hmm.
And so 14 responses tells me we're on the right track.
So that
Um,
would provide a location for a direct location for expanded services. We've been talking fairly generally. Um, Let me zero in on one of the two dimensions that we talked about at the outset. Ashley Kendall asked, I think, a very important and pointed question. She says, a recent study done by Harvard Graduate School of Education highlighted mental health challenges among young adults. You made reference to that earlier. What are we doing in Pasadena to help the young adult community by decreasing social isolation, depression, and anxiety? In other words, a kind of a preventive
yeah,
strategy as well as a therapeutic one.
yeah. I think, our school district is doing a lot of very good things. I see um, Dr. Blanco, who I'm a great supporter of, on this chat. I think some of the nonprofits who provide alternative activities for kids are doing a good job. And I think the city, through its rec department and other departments, is doing a great job. But is it enough? No, I absolutely believe, particularly on off-school hours and in the summer, that we can do more,
Mhm.
providing positive alternative activities for kids, particularly the young kids. I'm a big believer in early childhood development and early childhood education. I pressed for the task force on early childhood development and education that's chaired by former Superintendent Dr. Vera Vignes.
Mhm.
And the goal there is precisely what Ashley's talking about, and that's paying attention to kids when they're in that 0 to 5 window, what many say are the most formative years for children. And that group is focused on ensuring that every child has an opportunity to be enrolled in and participate in early childhood education. Um, and I
One of
think
your
we can
formative
accomplish that.
one of your formative experiences, Mayor, was working for Day One. That still is active in the community. Talk a moment, if you don't mind, about that dimension of particularly reaching adolescence.
Yeah. So you mean the day services that Day One provides and
Yeah, you
organizations.
worked for them early
Yeah.
on in your career.
Yeah, I worked early on, and precisely in the area that Ashley's talking about, providing my goal. I was the youth programs coordinator when I started at Day One, and in the early 1990s, and our goal was to coordinate um, nonprofits in the cities and the county's effort to provide alternative activities for kids, particularly in the summer when kids didn't have much to do, in particularly kids who live in places like Kings. I still call it Kings Manor, but Kings Villages and high density developments.
Mhm.
And so we focused on providing activities, taking kids to Santa Monica Beach, creating Youth Month that ensured that every day in the month of August, when kids were out of school, there were positive activities, whether it was a barbecue or softball games. But at every one of our community centers, there were activities, and that was I enjoyed that work because it was direct service to our community.
And this underscores for me the experience I had during the campaign. When I first started knocking on doors and talking to folks, and one of the people I talked to is on this call, Laura Diaz Allen, and we'll get to a couple of her questions in a bit. I discovered many people very interested in the relationship between the schools and the city. And
Mhm.
my first reaction was, well, I'm running for the city council, and we
Mhm.
should talk to the people running for the school board. And what became clear very quickly, and has become underlined even more by your comments just now, is the opportunity and the challenge of these two institutions working together, right? You have eight elected people on one side, and you know, seven elected people on the other side, and getting them to work together along with
Mhm.
the two staffs who are in
Mhm.
different departments and schools, and have their
Mhm.
own narrow focus of the
Mhm.
job and the mission of their school or
Mhm.
their department, and then not only getting the two institutions to work together, but then to really put our shoulders behind the way in which the schools are such a jewel for La Cañada, for San Marino, for Arcadia, for South Pasadena. There's this tremendous pride, this sense that the public schools really help define the quality of life and community. Um, you've been at this a long time. How do we really solidify the relationship between these two critical institutions that serve this young adolescent and all the way from early childhood on?
Yeah, I think we're two separate governmental entities with separate statutory and budgetary responsibility and authority. But having said that, um, I think there's a lot of interplay between what we do and what the school board. And by the way, the school board has a tough job, and we should all recognize that. The staff at the PUSD and the superintendent have a very tough job uh, together with the school board. And that's why we need to form partnerships with the school district, whether it's after school activities, which we do, whether it's career technical training, which we'll talk a little bit about. Um, we should be looking um, to coordinate our efforts and make sure that uh, we're maximizing both city and school district efforts and resources to ensure that we're providing the best opportunity for the kids in this community, and for families in this community. That's what unites us. We're both in the people business.
Yeah, and both of us are products of our public schools, and both of us publicly have said that um, we would not be here but for the opportunities of great teaching and great opportunities in our public schools. And um, I don't want to make this a political discussion here with the election looming, but that's why I'm supporting both Measure PL, which will put our library back into operation, and you've been a leader on that,
Mhm.
and as well the two measures that the school district has to
Mhm.
provide additional resources in terms of facilities
Mhm.
and operations.
Mhm.
I think, and I know you share this, that education is the cornerstone of success and has a direct impact on mental health. And again, the question that Ashley and some of the questions that Laura's posing go to this this unease, this disquiet, this loneliness, this the phenomena of bullying on social media. Um, young people today have a more fragile existence. There's certainly stresses that you and I did not face, and so figuring out a way to support our public schools and all of our educational institutions, I think, is going to be really important for the mental health of us all.
Yeah, yeah, and including the parents. When our kids are struggling, we struggle.
Yeah.
Grandparents, when grandchildren are struggling, grandparents struggle. And so we have to recognize that, contributing and helping our kids succeed uh, means better mental health for all of us at all ages.
So, and Mario, looks like I just answered your question, and the mayor and I are in agreement on Measure PL, which is on the ballot to put our library back as a hub of community learning. Let's talk more about the unhoused. That is certainly a focus of the services you hope to provide at Lake and Villa, both a continuum of mental health and addiction services as well as housing to get people off the streets. Tell us a little bit about Lake and Villa and what you envision there, and then also how we're coordinating with LA County, because I know they join our port team, and there's an effort to get people services, but just
Yeah,
like you struggled to get people services, it's even harder if someone doesn't have a fixed address to get
yeah,
them regular, continuous, effective mental health or addiction treatment.
yeah. Well, the the project, the effort at Lake and Villa is the goal is to do things differently. I mean, right now, if you are pursuing assistance personally or for someone or on behalf, or we're trying to bring assistance to a friend for addiction services, you go to the Department of Mental Health.
Hmm.
For substance disorder services, you go to the Department of Mental Health. For mental health services, you go to the Department of Health Services. They don't treat, people don't function that way. They don't treat them together, and so our the effort at the Kaiser building is to bring those services under one roof, so people aren't being sent all over the place. And I think that's going to be it's intended to be a model on how to provide those services under one roof, together with other services, including housing services. It shouldn't be so. Um, uh, I'll use the word balkanized. It's probably too strong a word, but sometimes I do get the sense that departments are competing with each other for resources and not coordinating enough with one another to provide those resources. And so we need to change that.
So you made reference earlier to the lingering stigma around mental illness, and that certainly is magnified when it comes to dealing with the unhoused population in our community.
Yeah,
And so there have been instances in Pasadena that have gone well and not gone well in terms of locating services. I remember one of the experiences of the last time I served on the city council was enduring 3 nights of passionate testimony on locating Union Station, where it's been now for 30 years. But at that time, um, we had to go through just a gut
yeah.
wrenching, emotional, this would destroy that part of Pasadena, et cetera, et cetera. Do you see challenges with locating this and other needed facilities, given the stigma that people have toward the mentally ill and toward people who are homeless?
It's going to be there's some stigma, but you keep in mind that the services that we're seeking to provide are outpatient services. We're
Mhm.
hoping to keep people from reaching that level where they need much more intensive services than can be provided at the Kaiser facility.
Mhm.
And so these will be services to kids and to others in our community, um, hoping that they don't reach the level where they need the much more intensive services. For example, that people who are at some people who are at Union Station may require. And so it's a different model. It's intended to be more preventive um, than I think uh, the Union Station model is.
And what is the timeline, do you think, with the recent unveiling of 14 interested parties? Government can move slowly, and it can particularly move slowly when it's confronting some of the balkanization
Yeah.
you just referenced, where we've got to get our act together, the county's got to we got to work together to coordinate uh, whoever we have as a partner, whoever we choose. Could this take years before we see something actually available in our community?
It could, but I'm committed to doing all that I can, and I'm going to ask for everyone's help to ensure that it doesn't, including you, Councilmember-elect Gold.
And I'm going to
Um,
be looking to the residents of District 2. the number one issue at the door for folks was homelessness, and
Yeah,
it's interesting. I had an interesting reaction from many people, which was this is a serious problem. They recognize it's a regional problem. They're frustrated with it. They see it growing in Pasadena, but they say, what the heck are you going to do about it? Right? There's a tremendous skepticism
yeah,
about government's efforts so far. Part of that is understandable because of, the
yeah,
bureaucracy and the slowness in
yeah.
which we move. I am hoping, Mayor, that we can join together to declare homelessness an emergency and treat it as an emergency so we can expedite projects like the one at Lake and Villa.
Well, I we can we can call it an emergency. We can call it whatever we want, but it's going to take action. And so I am committed that, as soon as we select out of those 14 um, a um, a partner, and I think and I do invite everyone to look at the agenda. And I'm sorry that I can't make those names public tonight, but they are big hitters and people who know what they're doing, and do development nationwide. And as soon as we select one of them, I'm committed to going to Sacramento, and talking to the governor, because we want to model how, in right here in Pasadena, we want this to be the model for how um, social services, mental health services, and health, social, and mental health services are provided in coordination between local government, county government, and the state.
A moment ago, you
And
said
so I want to push them to take this seriously and provide the funding so it doesn't take 4 years or
uh,
five or
sure. With you there, absolutely. A moment ago, you mentioned that you saw this being more oriented toward outpatient services, preventive care,
yeah,
rather than the kind of acute
correct.
intensive care. That is another pain point in the system. When I was city
Yes.
manager of Santa Monica, our police officers would sometimes spend 5 to 10 hours um, still having someone in custody that they had taken yeah, as a 5150. That's the section of California
Yeah.
penal that relates to people who are not able to take care of themselves, and so they're
Yeah.
involuntarily committed. And the officers would have to sit at harbor for 6 to 10 hours before a bed opened up and they could be
Yeah.
seen. And
Yeah.
LAPD officers told them, "Well, you have it easy. We're spending 12 to 18 hours on overtime, just waiting with someone who's in distress
Yeah.
to get them treatment." Where can we see progress on the acute,
Yeah.
particularly among our unhoused population?
No, absolutely. I mean, the availability of beds is dramatically disappointing, for the acute afflicted population. Let me give you another data point. At Huntington Hospital, here we have a regional medical center. We have 16 beds. That's it.
For mental health.
Um, for mental health. Yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you. For mental health, 16. And that's the funding that the hospital is provided.
So
And
that's
so
an
we,
opportunity where we can expand that with the cooperation of Huntington and with potentially, I know the county is committed to a major expansion of beds. They have a court order, in fact,
yeah,
that requires them to add literally thousands of beds. And then, of course, they have to staff them and staff them well in order to provide humane and effective care
yeah,
for people.
yeah. I can't speak for the hospital,
Hmm.
but I do know that Dr. Morgan, who's the CEO at the hospital, would like to see more beds in our community. Whether that's the role of the hospital directly, or other organizations. That's a question for the medical professionals. But I do know that she agrees that, in fact, she's the one who initially raised the issue with me, that we needed to advocate for more beds, for more services, particularly outpatient services.
Before we shift our focus to a related topic, and I'm going to use a question from Laura Diaz-Allen to bridge that, I want to address a kind of an urban legend, and like most legends, it has a certain uh, grounding in truth.
Mhm.
But I've encountered this not only here in Pasadena, talking to folks at the door, but also in my roles in other communities. Um, this all gets blamed on Ronald Reagan, right? That when he was governor or when he was president, the story varies. Um,
Governor.
all the mental hospitals were closed, and thousands of people were left out on the street. Um, my understanding of that is that there is again a grain of truth in that. Of course, it isn't just Ronald Reagan because it happened almost simultaneously in 50 states. California obviously was one that was a model, good or
Mhm.
bad. As it turned out, mostly bad. But the original idea behind um, the shutting down of these giant institutions, which had severe limitations, right? They were not
Mhm.
well funded. People were shut away for their whole life. Oftentimes, the conditions were hellish, and so
Yeah.
there's a reason why, besides just penny pinching, that those institutions were phased out. But the Petrus Landerman sort of model, named after one of our local legislators, um, was that there would be community-based mental health services, not unlike what you're advocating for Lake and Villa, that would be very low barrier to entry, um, that people would feel comfortable uh, taking their families to, that they could get help so that families and neighborhoods could continue to house people, uh, because they got good services,
Mhm.
easily accessible on a daily basis. Is that similar to the model that you're advocating for, that we sort of return to what we failed to implement 50 years ago?
Well, and you're right. I mean, the hospitals were closed, and some of them for very good reason. I think we had a model that warehoused people and didn't provide the services. Now, some people need that, intensive um, those intensive services, and we should provide those. But I think the model as it stood was not the best model because it didn't provide the outpatient services that I'm hoping we do. And then when we closed when the hospitals were closed, the primary mistake, and you're touching on it, is we didn't replace the services that were there. We sort of just turned and said, well, they should be provided by social service agencies, and then didn't fund the services. And so it became an unfunded mandate. And what we have ended up with is a lack of services. And we what we did do was substitute. Um, well, I shouldn't say substitute. We changed our focus to a symptom of mental health and drug addiction, and said we have a homeless crisis. And yeah, we have a homeless crisis because we haven't treated the mental health and addiction disorder. My experience has been that, people who find themselves without a home or, usually because they've lost their job, if we provide uh, housing for them or offer to provide housing for them, they accept it immediately.
Hmm.
But when you have someone who doesn't always understand they're grappling with a mental health issue, they themselves don't, or an addiction issue, they don't always accept the services right away. And when they do, they can't keep them because, they've got issues that need to be dealt with. We can't just provide four walls and a roof to someone and expect that they're going to be okay. People are social animals. They want to socialize, and without the services, the mental health and addiction services, they end up right back on
Yeah.
the street.
no question.
medicating themselves.
Yeah. And group homes and more structured environments for folks who are in recovery is really crucial. It's an important
Yeah,
transitional step. Um, Ashley's posed a couple more comments and questions. One I want to touch on, and then I do want to shift our emphasis, which is again the longer term residential treatment for people um, who need
hmm,
to not be locked up, in a punitive way,
yeah,
but who need the kind of intense services that
yeah,
help people through severe psychosis.
yeah,
Um, that
yeah,
too seems to be there's a dearth of that in or
yeah,
near Pasadena.
yeah. There is, and and we have to, and again, back to, I've always said, passing as a leader, and putting our efforts at a place like the Kaiser property, and then pressing the county and the state to provide the services that are needed there, and then demanding that they go a step further and also provide those acute beds and services for people who do need that more intensive work,
Great.
assistance, I should say.
Well, thank you all for your thoughtful comments and questions in the chat. We got to a number of them. I'm sure there's more, and this is not an issue that's going to go away, and it will be a key priority for the City Council because of the mayor's leadership, and I will be joining him along with my colleagues in really trying to mobilize our community around making direct and urgent improvements in what is really a crisis. Um, Laura Diaz-Allen asked a question that, or posed an issue that I think bears directly to sort of the segue here. She
Mhm.
says, I'm interested in exploring the connection between access to job and trade preparation options and mental health addiction in our teens.
Mhm.
Lots of students with learning disabilities who are struggling in school and don't see a path for themselves check out, get worse emotionally, self-medicate with substances.
Yeah,
So she's
yeah,
making a direct connection between pathways to economic independence and self-sufficiency. And look, in our society, having a job, a meaningful job, is part of your self-image and your self-worth. That may be good, that may be bad, but that's pretty baked into the American character. Is well, the first question, Europeans often
yeah.
ask is, "Who's your family?" And almost always Americans say, "What do you do?"
What do you do?
And if you're embarrassed or don't have a good answer or can't find a job at all, um,
Hmm.
there's no question that that has mental health implications. So, Mayor,
Yeah.
talk about why you've made it a priority to focus on vocational education. You're not on the school board, you're not on the community college board, you're the mayor of the city. Why vocational education as a top priority for you?
I think the comment that you just made is absolutely true, and that's why. I mean, look, I think it starts even it, before that, and not just in adulthood. But I go back to when I was in high school, in at Pasadena High School, and there were different paths to success, right? You could get on the college path, or you could take some vocational training, or there were wood classes, metal shop classes. Kids were allowed to, or had the opportunity to develop their interests, and that affected their mental health. There was a place for everyone.
Mhm.
And then in the 1980s, we made a mistake as a society, and I'm talking about nationwide. We said every child has to go to college to be successful. And that, I think, back to the comment, that had a tremendous impact on kids who maybe didn't want to go to college. I think what we should have said was every child who wants to go to college should have the opportunity to go to college. And we said something, we said something that encouraged 39.6% of kids, because in the history of this country, only 39%, 39.6% of all people have ever gone to college and received some sort of degree or certification. So the 60%, we said, if you don't want to go to college, if that's not your path,
Hmm.
you're not going to be successful. And imagine the impact on the psyche that that had.
Hmm.
Well, I don't want to go to, I want to follow, I want to buy I want to start my own company, roofing or,
Hmm.
and we shamed them. And that was wrong.
Hmm.
And so part of what uh, I'm attempting to do is, at least right here in our community, is undo some of that,
Hmm.
and provide those pathways to success. And our district is engaged in that work already.
Hmm.
And I want to bolster that
Hmm.
together with the district and in partnership with the district um, to give people the opportunity to, if they have an interest in the trades, to develop those skills and find their own pathway to success, not predetermined that they're not going to be successful because they didn't choose the same path that I chose. I went on to school and then law school, as you pointed out.
There's a couple of sort of extreme bookends here, and pardon me for the background that makes this metaphor literal. Um, the one is the German model, right,
Mhm.
where very sophisticated education is offered to young people that has made Germany an economic and industrial powerhouse,
Mhm.
where there really is a tremendous respect, which you say is lacking in America, toward vocations and trades that don't necessarily involve the academic track. And then there's, I think, an understandable fear that this is tracking poor kids or
Yeah,
minority kids or kids that have
yeah,
been stigmatized early on
yeah,
in their education. Well, you're not a smart kid, so you're not going to college, and so you have the opposite um, uh, shame.
yeah,
And so, how do we make sure that we're closer to the European model
yeah,
of giving respect and opportunity versus shunting people into sort of dead end um,
yeah.
and not very sophisticated programs?
I mean, I'm keenly aware of that challenge, and it's true. I remember when I was in high school, and my friends. I was an immigrant in this country uh, a number of years, under 10 years, and I started hearing from my friends um, at Pasadena High School that they were taking AP courses so that they could get into college. When I went to my counselor at Pasadena High School and said, I'd like to take some of these AP courses, the response I got was, those courses are for kids that are going to college. You should focus on getting a job after high school.
Hmm. Hmm.
Literally the response that I received. I
Hmm.
later found out, by the way, that my sister, who received her PhD from Berkeley, got the same response um, from the same counselor. But I do think we have to be conscious of that, and it's not. This is not about. This should not be about determining that kids who we determine or who we decide are better fit for trades should be enrolled in trades courses, and kids who we believe for whatever reason are on the path to college should only be enrolled in college. This is about exposing young kids to the varied opportunities to success
Hmm.
and respecting those opportunities, telling kids, look, this is, if this is your interest, we want to help you achieve it, not say to them, if this is your interest, you can't be successful. And I think young people will make if they're provided the exposure to the various paths to success, including college, they can then make a determination for themselves which path fits them best.
Hmm.
Our job is to make sure that they're exposed to the varied paths to success.
Yeah, it is an eternal conundrum. We got a comment from Laura saying, "LOL, it's the same now." Um, and I hope that's much less true. But sometimes in the same family, there are
Yeah,
pressures, against folks pursuing academic. Like that's not us. Nobody in our family has gone to college, and what makes you different? And similarly, families that have a whole tradition of kids going on to succeed academically, there are kids who that is not the right path for, and they struggle with it, and it causes mental health
yeah,
challenges and catches up with them many times later on in life, and often deep depression when they find themselves in college wondering why the heck they are there.
yeah,
Really not right for them. So it is there needs to be a lot of sensitivity, and that's challenging when you have a huge workload of 50 or 100 kids that you're counseling, um, and so figuring out how to be sure that there are also mentoring opportunities, and bring folks like you and me, and the folks on this call into our schools to show kids that there's not just the people they know who could be role models, but there are lots of people out there who can offer them something that would really resonate with their personal path in
yeah.
life.
And let me point out one other element that is unique to our effort in Pasadena. We've come together, the school district, the president of PCC, and and private industry, and our effort is to ensure that these pathways are offered at through public school. Because when we gutted these pathways out of public education in the 1980s, when we defunded them because we said, they weren't needed,
Hmm.
um, they were privatized. And suddenly we saw all these career technical colleges pop up all over the place, really diploma mills that would give people certification,
Hmm.
and also a huge loan payment to to grapple with as they were trying to enter the workforce.
Hmm.
And so I'd like to see us bring that training back, deprivatize it, provide it through public education in partnership with PCC. And this is why, because when we privatized those services, we also took away the college credits that some young people could receive. And so so someone going to one of these private schools would receive training and a certificate, and again, a large loan. And then when they want to move up into management or you know a different career path, uh, they don't have the college credits because those schools are mostly unaccredited.
Hmm.
By bringing them back in partnership with PCC, we're hoping that those credits will be um, college will be provided by PCC and an accredited institution, so that someone while they're gaining skills into the workforce, um, to enter the workforce, they're also receiving college credit. So if they choose to continue on,
So it's less binary in that case.
yeah,
They have
if they
multiple paths.
yeah, if they choose to continue with college, and some of them may, they can do that. One, two, if they decide later on in their career after, you know, working in their trade that they like to move into management or like to move on with their career, they've got those college credits to build
Or,
on.
as you mentioned before, start their own company and take on some management
Yeah,
responsibilities. Your comments both echo and open the door for Anita Mackey's comments. As we try to make more pathways available to kids, we need to be very aware of how many workplaces are changing. We should be asking employers what they need employees to know and be able to do. We'll also need to be ready to fund the workplace labs in the schools. And there's another dimension you've brought in, which is the labor dimension too. So
yeah,
um, can you share what's going on in Bakersfield? Because that's a
Yeah,
model that you're very keenly committed to. It's a very sophisticated and ambitious model, but I don't think many Pasadenans are aware of it. And so, can you share
yeah.
that example?
So let me first say that, when I, and shame on me. Um, when I say trades, I'm not talking about just, carpentry and iron workers and um, what we traditionally think of when we say trades, construction
Hmm.
trades. I'm talking about, medical technicians, lab assistants. We've seen a tremendous growth in the medical um, industry in Pasadena. I mean, you can't turn a corner without seeing,
Biomedical research, not just
yeah,
production. Yeah.
yeah, you can't turn a corner without touching one, whether it's, big institutions like Keck,
Hmm.
Doheny Keck USC, Doheny Eye Institute that's now affiliated with UCLA, or Protomer Technologies. I mean, but we've had over 300 medical companies move into Pasadena in the last year or so. And
Statistic.
what what they're saying to me is, we need we'll find the researchers,
Hmm.
the scientists that we need, but we need a labor force to support them, including lab assistants and medical technicians, and yes, some scientists as well.
Hmm.
And we should encourage our kids to strive for that as well. Um, but these companies want to be in Pasadena. I mean, today in the LA Times, if you look in the LA Times, there's an article about Wedbush wanting to be in Pasadena. Specifically, they've left Los Angeles. Now it's a financial services company, but the same applies to the medical technology industry. We've seen a tremendous level of investment, and they all say the same thing to me. Help us stay here by helping us build the workforce that supports our industry. And so when you touched on the efforts in Kern County in the Bakersfield, um, the Kern School District.
Hmm.
Um, we took the superintendent of schools, the city manager, members of the school board on a field trip.
Hmm.
The president of PCC, members of his board. There were probably 30 of us. I said, let's put them all on a bus and let's go look at the model in Kern County. And
Most public sector junkets go to Hawaii or Las Vegas, but you went to Bakersfield.
we went to big, yeah, we went to, it's beautiful though. It's open. There's a lot of space. And, we chartered a bus and put everyone on board and off we went. And the model that they have there is incredible. They're doing it now. They're a lot bigger school district than we are, but they have a campus where kids go and learn robotics, where they learn, design on the computers, where they learn medical, where they learn trades, everything in one place. And that creates such a synergy.
Mm.
Here's a large campus. Here's a campus full of kids all feeding off each other's, desire to explore their interests, whether it's automotive design, whether it's nursing, medical technical, but they're all looking to explore their interests and seek their path to success. And you could just feel um, the energy when we visited. And the superintendent and the school board members and the city staff and I came back energized. I'd like to see, we have 11 closed campuses in the Pasadena Unified School District.
Mm.
I'd like to see us take one of those campuses and build on that model that they have in Kern. I think we can do it. I think the need is there. and we just have to dedicate the resources to accomplishing it.
There's a couple of books behind me on the shelf by an author, Jane Jacobs, who's known mostly as a theorist of how cities work, in the sense of urban design. But
Mm-hmm.
but most of her work during her career was about what makes cities prosper, what makes cities thrive throughout history and into the 21st century.
Mm-hmm.
And her argument is that it is the mashup between specialized skills. And she focused on, an academic concept called import substitution, where basically you get stuff that other people have made and you figure out a way to make it locally and better. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and that's been the source of innovation and success. That's how Detroit became the center of the auto industry, how Silicon Valley became the center
Yeah.
of the technology industry, how Hollywood became the center of entertainment. Um, and Pasadena, I think one theme that's run through here this evening is Pasadena as a model of a learning community, of a community that's focused on well-being. Um, I heard it said once that the 19th century was run on coal. The 20th century was run on uh, gasoline and electricity, and the 21st century is run on brains. That's really the propelling energy force behind prosperity all over the world, and that the center of the universe, as you often call Pasadena, because of JPL, because of Caltech. We have Art Center College of Design. We have Fuller Seminary. We have Pacific Oaks College. We have this incredible range. We have Pasadena City College. Um, and we have a very educated population. Um, but we need to keep honing that competitive edge, and offering our young people the opportunity to rise, so that all of our Nobel Prize winners don't come from other countries.
Yeah, what I've said, and I think it's gotten lost now. It's Pasadena is the center of the universe, and I name all of these institutions, and but I finish it. This is the part that's gotten lost with, but that's not why we're the center.
Mhm.
We're the center of the universe because of the people in Pasadena, because we have a caring community, because we have a very diverse community that cares about others. And that's what we need to hone. What I think the challenge when you have these great institutions, the challenge for all of us is to ensure that everyone in our community can prosper together with the successes. I mean, to bring in 300 medtech companies to a lot of people might who maybe aren't prospering with those companies might say, well, it's not helping me. Our challenge is to find a way to let people who are here in our community prosper as these companies prosper. And so as Pasadena's medical industry grows, we ought to be looking for ways to ensure that people in our community have a way in to those companies.
Well, I can't think of a better opening to bringing more of our audience into being participants here with us. I promised, if you tuned in right at the beginning, that we'd open it up not only to your written questions, which we've been integrating into the discussion, but to any comments or questions you might want to pose. I know that earlier Frances Liao um, raised her hand.
Yeah.
Ask you to make it don't have to be a question, could be a comment, but please make it brief so we can have opportunity for everyone to participate. So we'll start with Francis, and then if you'll raise your hand, I'll try to scroll through and catch you and give you an opportunity to join in the conversation with Mayor Gordo and I. Francis, do you want to unmute yourself?
Hey, Francis.
Hi, Victor. How are you?
I'm good. How
Can
are
you
you?
hear me?
We
We
can.
can.
Okay, great. I'm totally on board with what you're talking about, vocational education. My question was, what would it take for you to support a reorganization of our secondary schools where the second 2 years, this isn't quite what I said in my chat. I simply said, why wait to PCC? Why can't we look? And I love the idea of using one of the closed schools, make trade tech, like LA Trade Tech. You know LA Trade Tech, they do wonderful work with the last 2 years of high school
Mhm.
being vocational. So when kids come out, they could be cooks, they could be plumbers, working maybe as apprentice. But in other words, the last 2 years of high school for a lot of kids
No,
is
keep
lost
talking.
time.
My
I don't
dog
have,
Rose.
I don't have to say that, but go ahead.
Let me just let Rose in because she's about to tear the door down.
Oh,
So, good point, Francis. And it reminds me, my father went to Muir Tech on Lincoln Avenue. That's
Rose is our Australian Shepherd.
so your
or we
reaction.
could have dog herding as a vocational skill, or dog walking, or animal care. I mean, those are very valuable. Animal care is critical now.
Yeah.
So your
So I
reaction to
rest my case.
Francis's, your reaction, Mayor, to Francis.
Yeah, I think, I mean, again, I wouldn't want to predetermine that uh, and I don't think this is what Francis is saying, that the last 2 years should, be solely vocational. But I think, you know, there's a role for the school district to play to provide exposure. And maybe the pre-apprentice work can get done at the high
Okay.
school, so that kids are ready to enter an apprenticeship, a paid apprenticeship coming out of high school.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you, Francis.
Absolutely good.
Let me ask Marna to weigh in. Marna Cornell. Marna, let me
Yeah,
Marna.
unmute.
yes, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for all your comments and Rick asking. I mean, so many good ideas, I think, for our city, and wonderful lake and mountain to use that old Kaiser facility. That city. Is there any chance of using St. Luke's, or is that's another thing that's sitting there? I don't know what the circumstances are of that. And the other thing, I did put something in, I don't know if it's appropriate for tonight, but just weighing in on the affordable rents and things and living here. What are the propositions that are on the ballot? How would they affect Pasadena? That refer to housing? Is there just one, or is there more? I'm not trying to look at my ballot.
This is the year of propositions.
I know there are a lot, but ones that there's at least one talking about housing. How, I'm just not clear on how that would affect our city. It's hard
Yeah.
to know from the ads.
Yeah, I think that we probably won't get into all the complexities. One
Okay.
thing that I believe the mayor and I are in accord on is Measure A at the county, um,
Yeah.
which would supplement um, Measure H, which has been providing services. But part of the problem is that there's not housing at the end of the services, and Measure A on our county ballot um, would begin to open up uh, funding for something called La Casa, and the mayor's been focused on regional approaches to affordable housing as well as local
Oh,
ones.
uh-huh.
So Measure A is I think something that everyone on the city council is supporting that I know of.
Yeah. And I'm a member of the
I mean,
Pasadena Glendale, the newly created Pasadena Glendale um, and Burbank Housing Trust. I've always said that, we have to work with our neighbors in order to really make a dent when it comes to housing, and frankly, all of these issues. And so I'm proud of the fact that we started the Housing Trust with our neighbors to the west. And then we're also members of the San Gabriel Valley Housing Trust. And Rick attends the homeless committee's meetings. But we're a member of that housing trust as well. And so we're working with our members to the east and to the west. Um, In terms of using St. Luke, that's in private hands at the moment. We're all waiting to
Idea though,
see.
isn't it, Mayor?
Well, it is a great idea. I mean, the location is perfect because of its proximity to other medical providers in that area along Washington.
Definitely. Yeah.
And its location in terms of mass transit, it also makes it a very attractive location. But at the moment, we've had a very difficult time getting the attention of the private owner and getting them to repurpose the hospital and the land around it. That doesn't mean we're going to give up. We're going to keep trying. But one of the complexities and one of the reasons why I asked the city council to step in on the Kaiser property is when we control the property, we have more of a say.
Sure.
We control the former Kaiser property, but we don't control city.
Let
Okay.
me call on Ashley Kendall Jones, who's made some thoughtful comments in the chat so far. Ashley.
Thank you guys so much for having this forum. I am so thankful that you're here, the mayor of Pasadena, and Rick Cole has been such an instrumental voice in the city. We've met at the park a few times during events. Yeah, I just really want to bring to attention like the young adult community in Pasadena, specifically people who've graduated college and come here who are living in apartments, often working from home remotely or going to schools, master's programs also remotely. In a hybrid and digital environment, so many young adults are dealing with anxiety, depression, social isolation. And there's lots of good resources for us to get counseling and get therapy in the city, but sometimes there is barriers to entry, particularly financial barriers for young adults who are often strapped with student loans and very low salaries jumping into the workforce. So I just want to hear kind of if there's any programs or strategies for addressing the issues of the young adult community, specifically as we're seeing more and more renters in the county. People are getting married later and later, having kids later and later. So we're seeing a lot more renters come into Pasadena in apartment complexes that also need support. I heard a story of someone who didn't leave their house for months, using DoorDash, Amazon, working from home. And so just wanting to address that sense of isolation, maybe with more third places, like fun places to go in Pasadena that aren't just bars, like maybe a business that's open later, or free therapy or free counseling for young adults who are transitioning post-COVID, into the workforce. That's become so instrumentally different from when it was in previous generations. So yeah, just want to highlight the young adult community and hear kind of what sort of things we're doing for them to make sure they're supported.
Yeah, I think we all knew COVID was going to change our life.
Yeah.
And not just COVID, the health emergency, but I tell people, the thing about COVID is it was a health emergency, it was a COVID emergency, and now we're seeing that it sort of had a trickle effect on the way we live our lives.
Yeah.
And companies are adjusting to it because more people are working from home.
Right. Right.
Many of the higher education institutions are doing the same thing.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Remote learning. And I think, I'm hoping at some point we can reverse that. As we lose exactly what you're talking about, the socialization, the opportunity to interact with people, to think creatively and imagine together instead of through a screen.
Right.
And I think we've lost a lot in our industry. We've lost a lot in our life because of COVID and because of some of the, unfortunately, habits that we learned. It's become easier. I mean, we're proof of it tonight.
Right.
come
There are
easy.
benefits for sure, but it's just the balance,
Yeah.
achieving that balance.
And finding the balance and hopefully reversing it, particularly for the younger generations and
Mhm.
our seniors as well.
Yeah.
Uh, for I mean for the those two populations, it's
Mhm.
exacerbated by
Yes. And I wonder even if there could be a gap bridge there in the Harvard study that I referenced in the chat. It talks about one of the strategies even being like older adults mentoring young adults,
yeah
and passing on that wisdom the young adults so desperately need, and giving older adults a companionship that they're also looking for. And
yeah
that could even circumvent some of the mental health problems. And rather than just treating them, we're actually preventing them in the first place, if at all possible.
yeah that's and here's where we're again um, our regulations sometimes get in the way of that.
Yeah.
um, because that's a terrific idea. When I visit places like Villa Esperanza, I'm
Mhm.
sorry, Villa Gardens,
Mhm.
and some of the other senior living um, locations, people are hungry to pass on
Yeah.
their
Mhm.
information.
Yeah, and
And
even in neighborhoods,
yeah,
we have people who are isolated, and who
would
live
love
near
to.
you, and you know this too, who need someone to talk to, and,
Right.
and need
And
to
and
talk
s-
to.
so when they say I'd like to volunteer at the schools or the library or the parks, then suddenly they have to go through, you know, background checks and that's discouraging. Now we all know why those are there, but we have to
Yeah.
strike a balance.
Right.
If we're going to get people back in, with the appropriate safeguards, so to working as a community. So you get our seniors working with young people,
Mhm.
uh, but we have to do it in a way that maintains safety for all.
Before we wind up, I wanted to give Laura Diaz-Allen an opportunity to weigh in. She asked in the chat, and I also would direct you to Zoomerama. I don't know who that is, but Zoomerama's very thoughtful comments in the chat about just how we treat each other in what she calls quotidian places in our community, just the normal places of how we treat each other
Yeah,
when we're in public spaces, and that includes the city council.
yeah,
How council members treat each other, how school board members treat each other, how the public and we interact.
yeah.
Um, Sometimes there can be, anger can boil over, and sometimes for understandable and even justified reasons, but anger very seldom gets us to the listening place of solving problems. And
I,
so,
I think it. I think that's absolutely true. I mean, I think one of the biggest challenges we face, not just in Pasadena, but in this country, is the unwillingness to listen to one another and the divisiveness that it's caused throughout the country. The unwillingness to recognize that we're better off working together than being so divided.
yeah, and
Um,
it's okay to disagree.
it's
Absolutely.
okay to disagree. It's okay to disagree.
The way
And
you do it
then
is important.
right, and it's just it's something that we all in everything that we do need to work on.
Laura?
Yes, hi. Thank you for giving me a minute. So one of the things that I'm interested in is looking at interagency information sharing. So, for example, when I was looking for a mental health facility for somebody in my life,
Mm,
um, it was hard to figure out where to go.
yeah,
And it feels to me, and I know that Collaborate Pasadena has been trying to do this for a long time, just having some sort of shared directory of all of our services in Pasadena so that it's not so hard to find something. Um, and I don't know where they are with that. I don't know if they gave up. But I know in an era of everything being electronic, it shouldn't be this difficult. And I'm just thinking, if I go to the PUSD website, there might be some links to things that the city's offering and vice versa. Having more of that interconnectedness on our websites. So again, it's very difficult for someone in crisis to figure out where to go. And we usually go to the place that we are closest to. So if we have a child in schools, we might go there, but we can't expect every counselor, every teacher, everyone to know all of the possible services that are out there. Yeah. So I'm just thinking of, again, I know we want to offer more things, but we also do offer quite a number of things. And I think that the citizens don't always know that we offer them. Yeah. So I feel like this is a fairly practical, not that outrageously expensive way to provide more services just by providing more information. And I have another segue. There was a homeless woman on my blog. She was here for, I want to say, months, and it killed me that her state. And I wanted to bring her in and offer her a meal and a shower, but she wasn't well. And so I called the non-emergency services in Pasadena, and I described the situation. I said, I want to help her. I don't know what to do. And I said, could you send someone out to talk to her? I said, please do not send the sirens and all that stuff, right? It's going to scare her. Well, they said, okay. And that's exactly what came. And I know that there are efforts. I don't know if it's in Pasadena yet, but I know in other places to have more of a social services outreach to people who are not in a good mental health situation and that would be scared by the police or by the fire department. And so I'm just wondering if that might be something that we can work on. I never know what to tell those people, like other than give them a bottle of water or a couple bucks. Like, I don't know what to direct them.
There are successful models around the country of unarmed response, and it is something that I hope that council can take a look at.
Including in Pasadena. I mean, we have the Hope Team. Where with a firefighter and social worker teamed up to go out, and we have the port team in the fire department and the Hope Team in the police department. Both include social workers and mental health workers. And they go out and talk with people, establish a relationship, and try and bring them to services. In terms
of, sorry,
they're only 20 hours a week at the moment, and so we have to identify resources to make that available at
I was just interested in how, when I called, they didn't say, we will refer it to the Hope Team or we will send someone. They just the whole team came. Sorry to interrupt here.
No, and we are looking at increasing the teams so that we have 24/7 coverage. And in terms of your struggle to bring a friend to services, I agree with you. That's what got me moving in the direction that I'm moving in, because here I see when I was looking for services for my friend, and I here I am, the mayor of this great city, calling the head of mental health and still struggling to figure out, where can I bring my friend? That's all I wanted to know. And so what I said to Dr. Sharon is, you have the largest budget, but where's the front door? You have the largest budget for services, but I can't find the front door to access those services. Where do I go? Where do I take my friend? And he very honestly said to me, I need your help to fix this. We need to decentralize this huge mammoth department. LA County Mental Health has, at the time, had well over 7,000, nearly 8,000 employees. In the city of Pasadena, we have 2,200 employees, just to give you, an idea of how big that department is. And that's just in the department. Now, imagine all of the agencies that provide mental health and social assistance services in the county and then in the state. And so that's what we need to change. I do think there are services that are untapped. In some areas, we need to augment services. In other areas, we need to figure out how we can help people access those services. And that's what I mean by where's the front door? Let's help
Yeah.
the county make that front door.
Or I'm going
Do
to
we have a mental health committee in Pasadena? Or an advisory board or a task force? I'd be happy to volunteer if we do.
task
We
force
are going to put together a committee, community committee for the Kaiser project so that we can have community input as that that effort goes forward.
That's Laura. That's a good point. And whether it's a formal committee or not, the purpose of these monthly issue forums has been to inform, to engage, and I hope to activate. Many of you on this call are already active in the community, but many are not. And many who are not on the call or who haven't come to Jefferson, who I've knocked on their door, they're thoughtful, they're caring, they would bring a lot to bear, not just on politics and government, but issues like education and mentoring and healthcare and mental health. And as a community, I think we are in a unique position. Pasadena's got extraordinary resources, but as the mayor said earlier, its greatest resource are its people. I want to thank all of you who've stuck with us over the last hour and a half. I want to thank Mayor Gordo for a very thoughtful sharing of his views and experiences over a lifetime in this community of service. And let's make sure that it doesn't end here, that each of you find ways to support this effort over the next several years of focusing in on improving mental health in our community, improving vocational education, and all the other challenges that we face, homelessness, etc. I'm sure that the folks who've tuned in are folks who are going to vote. I have endorsed Measure A, the county measure for homeless services. I've also endorsed Measure PL to put our library back in operation, and two school issues, Measure E, E, and R. You all get to make your own choices, and I look forward to representing all of you, whether you live in District 2 or not. And of course, that's the mayor's job, is to represent all of you. And I look forward very much to working with him. I'm going to give you, Mayor, an opportunity for a final word, and then we'll sign off.
Well, I wanted to thank everyone for being interested residents and citizens. That's what keeps us motivated at city council. It certainly what keeps me motivated as mayor. And I have the tremendous honor and privilege of serving as mayor. And I want to thank you all for that honor and privilege. It's a responsibility I take very seriously. And I'm going to be working with Council Member Cole soon. And I can assure you that we'll have some spirited debates on many of these issues, and I hope that you'll join us. And when I mean spirited, I mean, we're excited about it. We're excited about working together and seeing some of these efforts make progress. And sometimes making progress means calling all of you to be involved so that our colleagues on the city council see the same level of interest that we're seeing here tonight.
Thank you all so much, and have
Thanks for having us. Thanks so much, you guys.
We will
Thank
see
you. Thank you,
Thank you.
Mayor Gordo and Rick. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
We'll
Thank you.
see you in a month on our third Tuesday of the month for our next issue forum.
Thank you.
Very much.